Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with part 13, Who is the Widow's Son? From Freemasonry, Ancient Egypt, and the Islamic Destiny by Mustafa El-Amin. Chapter 13. Who is the widow's son? History tells us that we were master builders and that we were slain by Jubela, Jubelo and Jubelum in the form of England, France and America. The story of Hiram Abiff, the widow's son, says he was struck in the throat with the 24-inch gauge, struck in the left breast with the square, and struck in the head with the setting maul. We, too, were struck in those same three places. We were struck in the throat, which means we were robbed of our language and the ability to articulate the knowledge we once had. History reveals that even when the Caucasian slave traders packed the African into the ships, they made sure that we were from different communities with different dialects so that we could not communicate with one another, hit in the throat. The African American was struck in the left breast, which means we were struck in the heart. The Caucasian slave master tried to kill our human love for one another. It is reported that many times the slave master would make the slave whip his own brother. Being struck in the left breast or heart also means cutting off our ability to properly weigh and judge the thoughts that come from our brains and mind. The heart and mind check one another. Yes, we were hit in the heart. They tried to make us cold and insensitive towards one another so that they could draw back in their ivory towers of elitism and nobility and relax while we kill one another. Black-on-black crime is a very serious problem for us now. It is because we were hit in the heart. The story says Hiram was finally killed by a blow to the head. This means that we were robbed of the knowledge of God, our culture, our religion, our name, our identity. They stripped us of every thought, of every conceptualization of our past. They were content to know that they had extinguished every bit of light that we had in our minds. The story says that Jubelo and Jubelum killed the master builder with the tools that he used to build the temple. This means they used the precious knowledge that the Africans had used to advance man and society, and they twisted it and used it to destroy a whole nation of people. In other words, they twisted the truth. God said man is created with dignity and that all men stand equal before the Creator. The Caucasian slave master, the white supremacist, twisted that and said that African Americans or black people were created by Satan. They said we were cursed by God to forever serve them as Lord and Master. They said we were subhuman. The ancient wise taught that black represented ignorance and evil, while white was associated with light and knowledge. The Caucasian twisted that and physicalized those mental concepts and said black people are evil. After they killed us mentally, spiritually, and physically, they threw us in the rubbish of lies, deceit, bigotry, and oppression. The legend of Hiram Abiff says he was a widow's son. This means he had no father to look out for him and to help teach and take care of him. Widow's son means we had no leadership. We had no one to defend us in that hostile environment. We were left to seek aid only from the society. We were deprived of fatherhood. We had no protection. In that helpless state, like the legendary Hiram Abiff, we were brutally murdered by people who were dominated by greed, hatred, and jealousy. Mahabone. The story of the murder of the master builder says that when Solomon and his men approached the grave, they said, "Oh God, my Lord, was there no help for the widow's son?" In other words, it was bad enough that he had no leadership in the world. It was bad enough that he only had the society to depend on. Now he has been murdered in such a brutal fashion. The story says Solomon said, Mahabone. This word or phrase has several meanings. Some say it means what the builder or that the builder. Others say it means marrow in the bone, which is a play on mercy in the bone or mercy in the heart. Any sane person who reads about the African Americans' experience during slavery would have to agree that there could not have been any mercy in the slave master's bones or heart to treat the African American the way they did. This is what Solomon was saying in that legend. Was there any mercy in Jubela, Jubelo and Jubelum's heart? Understand, brother, it is one thing to enslave a people and deny them physical mobility. But it is a grave, criminal and barbaric act to strike a man or people in their 3 stages of development, in their vital organs. The Caucasian did not just deny us certain rights. He robbed us of our knowledge. He stripped us of the knowledge of the true God, Allah, and gave us a substitute, a pale white image of himself, and told us to worship it. Our physical movement was restricted. We were placed in a shallow grave. The human being is physical, mental, and spiritual. The three blows represent the death of our total being as humans. The story says Hiram was taken from the rubbish and placed on a hill at 12 midnight. We can understand from this that a new conscience was beginning to dawn. 12 midnight represents the beginning of a new day. History tells us that after many, many years of slavery, the Caucasian slave masters freed us from physical bondage and placed us on the hill of separate but equal treatment. This freedom was not done out of love, but to provide labor and workers to build up the North. It was a northern conspiracy. The northern Caucasian used the ex-slaves as a buffer to absorb the anger and frustration of the southern white man. The southern white man was still angry with his brother of the North. Realizing this, the northern white man created a situation where the southerner redirected his attention from him and focused on us. They forced us down the throat of the southern white man. History tells us that 10 to 15 years after slavery, the North had support and placed many blacks over their ex-slave master. You may ask, what was wrong with that? There was no orientation. The white man and the black man needed an orientation period. They needed time to work out the situation. As a result, the Ku Klux Klan and other anti-black groups sprung up. The black codes were instituted in order to keep the Nizig in their place. The Southerners rejected and opposed programs that were designed to help the ex-slaves. For example, in 1865, Congress created the Freedmen's Bureau, which was designed to help ex-slaves get food, clothing, and jobs. We find that between 1868 and 1877, 16 blacks served in Congress at various times. The majority were from the South. Also in 1871, there were 2 black senators, Hiram R. Revels and Blanche K. Bruce. There was even 1 black or African American who served as acting governor of Louisiana. Imam W.D. Muhammad stated, "The North authorized former slaves to stand in authority over their former masters, the white people of the South, and didn't give them the psychology. He was a former slave. He should have been given some orientation. They received no orientation. In fact, they were sensitized to make a bad job of it, to create more bad feelings between blacks and whites, to take the pressure off of the northern white man so he could go ahead and build up the North and build up the United States, while the southern white man took out his hatred and vengeance out on us. Just like Hiram Abiff, the widow's son was taken from the rubbish and placed on a hill. We were taken from slavery and raised a little higher than physical slavery. The legend says Hiram laid in the grave 15 days. This means that his 5 senses were killed on all 3 levels, in his sensory body, in his rational mind, and in his spiritual perception. How do we know this? Because the legend says there were originally 15 men who plotted to kill him. Only 3 was actually needed because each of them had 5 senses. Each human has 5 senses in the sensory body. Jubelo killed the 5 senses in the rational body, and Jubelum killed the 5 senses on the spiritual plane. The story says they tried to raise the widow's son 3 times. This means they tried to restore him on all 3 levels. The first try was made with the knowledge of Boaz, which represents strength, physical might. Many have tried to raise the African American people by supplying them with material resources only: food, clothing, and shelter. Some say all the blacks need is money and a physical army, and that will raise them up. The legend says they tried with the Yakin principle. This represents government or establishment. According to Freemasonry, Boaz and Jachin together allude to a promise that God made to David that he would establish his kingdom in strength. The government, it seems, has tried to raise the African American people through government programs like welfare, food stamps, employment program, etc. Time has proven that those programs, for the most part, have failed and in fact worked against the progress of African Americans. It made many of them depend on the system. The legend says Hiram was finally raised by Solomon with the lion's paw. He did not grip one knuckle. He used all 5 fingers to raise the master builder. He raised him from a dead level to a living perpendicular to the square on the 5 points of fellowship. 5 is a circle. It represents spiritual discipline. Solomon is a play on solar or light. This tells us as African American people that we need the light. It is the light that will raise us. What held the master builder up? It was the 5 points of fellowship. History tells us that it was the light of the Holy Quran that raised the pagan Arabs up from ignorance to a high level of civilization, and it was the 5 pillars of Islam that supported them. That same light went into Europe and raised the savage, backwards European up like a man. The light of the Quran raised the African people back up to a high plane. Even today, if one would take the time to study the history of Islam in America and its effects on those who accepted it, they would see that Al-Islam, the Holy Quran, has been the most positive, effective influence in the life of African Americans. Although Al-Islam is for all people, it seems that black African Americans have been mostly attracted to it. Why? Because it represents that which was lost. Their soul cries out for it. That is their destiny. The master builder is being raised by the light of the Quran on the 5 pillars of Islam. Understand, African American Masons, you and your people were the ones who were cable-towed by the white slave masters and made to cross the hot burning sands of white supremacy, lies, deceit, and racism. The African American was blindfolded. Their true vision of themselves and the Creator was taken away. You were neither barefooted nor shoed, meaning the African American did not know where he stood in life. He didn't know if he was material or spiritual. The African American was cut off from his sacred life connection. The Holy Quran and the Islamic religion is your home. Islam is our destiny. It is our protection. The 3 boys in the fiery furnace. The Bible speaks of the 3 boys who were taken into bondage in Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. Before they were taken into captivity, their names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Like the African American, their names were changed by their master. Their names were changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The Bible says these boys were very intelligent and they were skillful in wisdom and cunning in knowledge and understanding science. The story says these boys had won the favor of the king because of their abilities and because of Daniel's great insight and abilities to interpret the higher symbols of creation. Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar. One night, the king had a dream which all his wise men were unable to explain the meaning of. Daniel 2:28-49. The Bible says the king sent for Daniel, who explained the meaning of the dream. For this, Daniel was made a great man and made him a ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. The Bible goes on to say that Daniel looked out for his brethren, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel did not forget about his brethren. He requested of the king that they be placed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. The day came when these boys, along with the rest of Babylon, had to pay homage to the golden calf, the god of the king Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible tells us that the 3 boys held fast to their belief in the all-wise creator of the heavens and the earth. They refused to bow down and worship the golden calf. For their refusal, they were cast into the furnace. According to the Bible, the king commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. The next day, the king returned to the furnace expecting to see the 3 boys burned to a crisp, expecting to see them bowing to the fire god. The king thought, as the white racists of America thought, that the boys would have broke under the heat of mockery, bigotry, racism, and oppression. But to his surprise, they were standing firm as if they had not been burnt. The Bible says that the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spoke and said unto his counselor, "Did not we cast 3 men bound into midst of the fire?" The story says instead of seeing 3, he saw 4. This world of bigots and white supremacists, I am sure, are surprised to see that the African American people have not only survived the fiery furnace of racism and rejection, but we are moving and making progress. I am sure that when they looked into the dungeon of America, they were surprised to see that their ex-slaves are now calling the Adhan, are now performing Salat the correct way, are now perceiving Allah in the right way. They were surprised to see Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Noble Drew Ali, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Shabazz. They are surprised to see the Muslims are still advancing and making progress. The heat that they placed on the Muslim community after the death of Honorable Elijah Muhammad was enough to scatter and disintegrate any living organization. Every effort was made to keep the outcasts from receiving a true image of al-Islam. They are surprised to see the leadership of Imam Warith Din Muhammad and the thousands of other Muslims uniting in spite of the heat of distortion and misrepresentation of the religion of al-Islam. The deceivers are constantly turning up the heat on good, productive, well-meaning people. Allah has control of the fire. The Holy Quran says Abraham was placed in the fiery furnace also, and Allah said to the fire, Ya naru kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim, O fire, be thou cool and peaceful for Abraham. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.